Welcome to the deep dive. Let's face it, in today's world, just holding on to a single thought feels like a superpower
Oh,
sometimes.
absolutely. We're constantly bombarded.
Yeah, juggling to-dos, sifting through endless information, and our minds often feel like, I don't know, they're running a marathon in a hamster wheel.
That feeling of being mentally scattered, it's incredibly common. The sheer volume of stimuli we encounter daily creates a pretty significant cognitive load.
Cognitive load, right?
It essentially stretches our mental resources thin and makes sustained focus, well, a real challenge.
Absolutely. And that's why we're diving deep today into a tool that can really help us reclaim some of that mental clarity, structured journaling.
hmm
We'll be looking at insights drawn from, various research and specifically considering the approach taken by Lestallion. Now, that's a name you might
We
recognize.
looked at their stuff before, yeah.
Exactly. We've touched on their organizational tools, their journal notebook for improving mental focus page. Well, it discusses how their notebooks, with their very intentional design, can support mental clarity. And they also point to some of the underlying science.
And that focus on structure from Lestallion, that's really key, I think. Without some kind of framework, our thoughts can easily become, well, just a jumbled mess.
Yeah.
And that just contributes to that feeling of overwhelm and, hinders our ability to concentrate on what truly matters.
Exactly. I've dabbled in journaling before, just sort of letting thoughts flow onto the page, which is fine. But what's particularly compelling about Lestallion's approach is how they've integrated these specific features that seem really designed to amplify those benefits of journaling.
Right, it's not just a blank page.
It's not just about the writing itself. It's about creating an environment that actively supports focused thinking. So our goal today really is to understand how structured journaling, especially with thoughtfully designed tools like these Lestallion journals, can help you, our listener, cut through all that mental noise and really sharpen your focus.
Okay, so let's start by dissecting this issue of mental clutter. It's pervasive, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The constant influx of information we face, daily news cycles, social media feeds, work demands it generates a really significant cognitive load.
Right.
Think of cognitive load as like the total mental effort your working memory is using at any one time.
Okay.
So when we're constantly processing this barrage of stimuli, it dramatically increases this load, and that leaves us with less mental bandwidth for focused attention and, in-depth thinking.
It really is like having way too many browser tabs open in your brain. Everything just slows down and you can't really engage deeply with any single one.
Exactly.
I actually remember a time I was trying to learn a new coding language, and I'd sit down at my computer, totally intending to focus. But between the notifications popping up, the emails dinging, and just the sheer complexity of the material, my brain just felt completely saturated.
It's overloaded.
Totally. I'd read the same paragraph like 5 times and still not really grasp it.
Yeah.
It was honestly only when I started using a structured notebook to kind of break down the concept step by step and actively write out my understanding. That's when things started to click.
Ah,
That act of just getting it out of my head and onto the paper, it made a huge difference.
that's a perfect example of how externalizing thoughts frees up those cognitive resources.
Yeah.
When you transfer information or worries or ideas onto paper, you're essentially relieving your working memory.
Picking the load off.
Exactly. It allows your brain to shift from simply holding onto that information to actually processing and organizing it more effectively.
And this isn't just a feeling, is it? I mean, Lestelli's materials, they touch on the science behind this. They refer to findings in psychology and neuroscience, indicating that regular writing actually aids in processing emotions, organizing thoughts, and even improving our decision-making.
Precisely. The link between writing and cognitive function, it's pretty well established. Research shows that the act of translating thoughts and feelings into words engages various brain regions, promoting self-awareness and emotional regulation.
Okay.
Furthermore, those systematic reviews they mention, the ones connecting structured writing to enhanced mental clarity, improved memory recall, and better goal-setting abilities, they really underscore the significant impact that intentional journaling can have on our cognitive performance.
Right, and this is where, my familiarity with Lestallion's tools kind of comes back in. It's pretty clear they've put a lot of thought into how the actual design of their journals can, facilitate this whole process.
Absolutely.
It's not just about having pages to write on. It's creating that structured environment that actively supports focused thinking.
Yes, and the features they emphasize are directly relevant to enhancing that mental focus. Consider, for instance, the the numbered pages and the integrated table of contents.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It seems simple, right?
Yeah.
But it offloads the cognitive burden of memory. Instead of mentally trying to remember where you jotted down that brilliant idea from last Tuesday.
Which you never can.
Exactly. You can just log it and easily find it again. This lets you dedicate more mental energy to the actual content of your thoughts, which is, a core principle of effective focus.
That table of contents feature, it actually reminds me of my cousin. She's a landscape architect.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and she uses a Lestallion journal specifically for her site visits. She told me how the numbered pages in that table of contents are just invaluable for tracking observations across multiple visits to the same property.
Yeah, I can see that.
She can quickly reference past notes on, like, soil conditions, plant growth, client comments, without having to flip through pages and pages of unrelated stuff. It's kind of like having a mini, well-organized database for her projects, all in one notebook.
That's an excellent illustration of how structure aids cognitive organization. By providing a system for cataloging information, those features reduce the mental effort needed to retrieve and connect ideas. It just frees up mental energy for more focused analysis and creative problem solving.
They also make a point about the thick 120 GSM paper. Now, initially, you might think, okay, nice paper, so what?
Right. Bit of a luxury, maybe.
Yeah, but think about how thin, cheap paper can actually be a subtle distraction. You get that ink bleed through, right?
Mm-hmm. Ghosting.
Exactly. A smoother, more substantial writing surface, it just enhances the whole tactile experience. It makes journaling more enjoyable and less prone to those little irritations that can just, pull your attention away from your thoughts.
You're absolutely right. The sensory experience of writing can significantly influence our engagement with the process. Higher quality paper definitely contributes to a more focused and less distracting experience. And similarly, those 7.5 millimeter wide-lined pages they use,
Yeah.
they play a role too in clearer, more structured writing. That specific spacing can help prevent our thoughts from feeling sort of cramped or jumbled on the page.
Makes sense.
It aids in focus and legibility down the line too.
And okay, let's not overlook the cover, the soft or hard faux leather cover.
Yeah.
That little touch of quality, it can elevate the act of journaling, right? Makes it feel more intentional, almost like a dedicated practice. It kind of signals to your brain, okay, it's time to focus here.
It's a ritual almost.
Exactly. And the back pocket, simple but super practical for keeping, little reminders, goal lists, maybe some journaling prompts easily accessible.
Each of these features, while maybe seeming minor on their own, they collectively contribute to creating an environment that minimizes distractions and actively supports mental organization. By reducing friction in the journaling process itself, tools like these Lestallion journals can make it easier to establish and, crucially, maintain a consistent habit. And consistency is key for realizing those cognitive benefits we've been talking about.
Okay, so now, thinking about why we often struggle with focus, Lestallion's resources also touch on some really common barriers. Things like stress and anxiety, obviously. Emotional overload, especially, in really challenging situations or dealing with past stuff.
Yeah, trauma, PTSD, things like that.
Right. Then there's the constant barrage of distractions and information overload we already mentioned. And finally, just those times when our thoughts feel completely disorganized, like spaghetti.
A very common feeling.
It's almost as if they've identified the main culprits behind our scattered focus and then kind of designed their journals as a direct antidote.
Precisely. And for each of these obstacles, consistent journaling can provide a really valuable outlet and potentially a path towards greater mental clarity.
Okay, so take stress or anxiety.
Right. When we experience stress or anxiety, the simple act of writing down our worries can help to externalize those feelings. It makes them feel less overwhelming, somehow more manageable.
Gets them out of your head.
Exactly. It creates a dedicated space for that emotional processing, allowing us to maybe analyze stressors a bit more objectively and begin to formulate coping mechanisms.
I remember a friend who was dealing with a ton of work-related stress, just completely swamped. They started keeping a journal, not with any specific structure at first, really just a vent.
Just getting it out.
Yeah. But over time, they noticed that the act of writing down their frustrations and anxieties actually helped them to step back, see the situations more objectively. And that ultimately improved their ability to focus on finding solutions instead of just dwelling on the stress itself.
That's a really common and beneficial outcome. And for individuals grappling with, say, more intense emotional overload, journaling provides that safe, private space to process those feelings at their own pace. The act of organizing those intense thoughts on paper can be incredibly cathartic and can contribute to a greater sense of emotional regulation and, ultimately, mental control.
And in today's digital world, I mean, distractions are just relentless, aren't they? Notifications, social media, the constant urge to multitask. It feels like a constant battle for our attention.
It really is. And journaling can serve as a very intentional countermeasure to this constant fragmentation of our focus.
How so?
Well, by consciously setting aside time to just sit and write, we are actively training our brains to sustain attention on a single task. It's like a workout for your focus muscle.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Furthermore, the structured nature of a notebook can help us develop strategies to regain focus when our attention inevitably wanders, which it will.
Sure.
We can use our journal to reflect on what typically distracts us and maybe plan ways to minimize those interruptions in the future.
And what about those days when your thoughts just feel like a tangled mess, just leaping from one thing to another with no clear direction?
Yeah, the spaghetti brain days.
Exactly.
Well, even then, the simple act of journaling can impose a sense of order. Even without specific prompts, just the effort of articulating your thoughts in written form compels you to slow down, connect disparate ideas, and structure them in a more coherent way.
Just the act itself forces structure.
To a degree, yes. And the inherent structure of the journal, especially one with those features we talked about, numbered pages, table of contents, it provides a ready-made framework for that unstructured thinking. It encourages a more linear, more organized approach to processing information.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges to our focus and how journaling, in general can be a really helpful tool. But Lestallion's resources also highlight some specific journaling techniques that can really amplify these benefits for mental clarity and concentration.
Right, practical methods.
Yeah, like the morning brain dump. I've heard of this.
Ah, yes. That's a highly effective practice. By just writing down everything that's swirling around in your mind first thing in the morning, worries, to-do lists, random thoughts, whatever, you're essentially creating a mental clean slate.
Emptying the cache.
Pretty much. It reduces the mental clutter that can really impede concentration later in the day.
Then there's the practice of goal setting and intention setting within your journal. I can immediately see how that would be a powerful way to direct your focus.
Absolutely. By clearly outlining your goals and intentions in writing, you create a kind of roadmap for your day or your week or month.
Okay.
This helps keep your mind aligned with your priorities and makes it easier to filter out distractions that don't actually serve those objectives.
What about gratitude journaling? Intentionally focusing on the positive. It's interesting to consider how that might impact focus, specifically.
Well, it might seem a bit tangential at first, but cultivating a sense of gratitude can actually reduce mental clutter and enhance clarity. It works by shifting your attentional bias towards positive experiences.
Ah, okay.
This can lead to a more optimistic and, surprisingly, a more focused mindset for tackling challenges, less negativity dragging you down.
Interesting. And the idea of using mind mapping within a journal for problem solving, that sounds like a fantastic way to visually organize complex issues and gain clarity.
Yes, adopting a visual approach to intricate problems can break them down into more manageable components. It can reveal connections that might not be obvious through just linear text-based thinking alone.
Right.
And a journal, especially one with blank or dotted pages perhaps, provides a perfect dedicated space for that kind of visual exploration.
And finally, they mention the practice of reflection and review, like regularly looking back at your previous journal entries.
This is so crucial, I think, for a continuous improvement in your focus and productivity. By periodically reviewing your journal, you can identify patterns in your thinking, you can track your progress towards your goals, and you can refine your strategies for maintaining concentration.
And that's where those features like numbered pages and the table of contents really come in handy again, right?
Exactly. They make that kind of reflective review so much more efficient and effective, rather than just randomly flipping through pages.
Okay, so to kind of wrap this up, it's really clear that journaling is far more than just, a passive activity like writing diary entries.
Definitely no.
It's a dynamic, science-backed tool for actively cultivating mental focus. And these thoughtfully designed journals, like the ones from Lestallion, with their specific features, we discussed the structure, the paper, the layout, they can significantly enhance this process.
Yeah, by providing structure, minimizing those little distractions, and ultimately empowering you, the writer, to take control of your attention.
Precisely. By offering that dedicated, organized space for our thoughts, these tools facilitate the very processes externalizing, structuring, reflecting that enable us to achieve greater mental clarity, sharpen our focus, and just improve our overall cognitive well-being.
It's really about actively shaping our internal cognitive environment, taking some control back.
So for you listening, if you often feel like your attention is just being pulled in 1,000 different directions, and who doesn't really,
Yep.
maybe it's time to seriously consider incorporating structured journaling into your routine. Think about maybe one small step you could take today. Perhaps even just reflecting on which of those journaling techniques we discussed, the brain dump, the goals, the gratitude, which one resonates most with your current needs. It really could be the key to unlocking a more focused and clear minded you.